What's up, guys? So, I have been wanting to comment on the Uketsu novels for a while because, it seems like if you don't know who Uketsu is, he is this masked, anonymous YouTuber who makes strange, surrealistic videos, usually that kind of loosely parody the whole unboxing video concept. And so, his videos are weird, surrealistic, strange, and he's got these books that I've been seeing cropping up everywhere in my local booksellers. And so I was curious because they're all built around using things like architectural blueprints and children's drawings and stuff like that as storytelling elements, as narrative devices. And so I wanted to, the thing is, I have followed, I realize I have been a fan of so many masked, anonymous type performers through the years. Some of my favorite artists, musical artists, include The Residents, Nash the Slash, Buckethead, Death in June, Ghost, Sleep Token, the list goes on. And I just found out, by the way, that there is a Nash the Slash tribute album that just came out. And I'm excited to hear it and mad that I'm not on it. But anyway, so I love this kind of stuff. There's something I've always been attracted to about these anonymous performers. I believe it was Oscar Wilde who said, give a man a mask and he'll show you his true self. And I resonate with that. I agree. Like these people, these anonymous, faceless performers. Jandek is another one. It was not masked, but he was anonymous for a long time until his identity eventually emerged. These performers, it's like they're able to be more eccentric and honest and experimental when we don't know who they are. We don't have any kind of reputational harm attached to them. And so Uketsu comes along, and it seems like, on the surface, exactly the kind of thing I would get into. But the thing is, the thing that I was curious about is there have been all of these YouTube personas through the years that have emerged as these strange characters. Who is this? What is this strange thing? And let's try to put the pieces together and figure this whole thing out. These things that have come out through the years, and I'm old enough to remember Lonely Girl 15 and Poppy and Marble Hornets and all of that stuff. And it's, sometimes these things pay off. Sometimes they're just weird for weirdness sake, and a way of like getting attention to, drawing attention to something. The Poppy videos were weird for weirdness sake to launch a singing career. Now, Moira, the actual Poppy, she's just another singer. I like her music, by the way, I really do. But, the videos were just to launch a singing career. And Marble Hornets, I was a huge Marble Hornets fan for years. I'm pointing to it like I'm going to be able to make the image come up. I met the guys who do Marble Hornets at Dragon Con one year, and I got a picture of them, and I have no idea where the picture is, so I don't know why I'm gesturing like I'm going to be able to superimpose it. But I did meet the two main guys behind it one year. They were nice guys. But Marble Hornets ultimately did not really do anything to build on the Slender Man mythos. It just ended up ultimately being weird for weirdness sake, to try as like a publicity stunt to launch some screenwriting careers and that kind of thing. And so, as much as, and then also talking about Uketsu, who is Japanese, Uketsu, comes from the world of Japanese artistry and everything, which is also something I'm very passionate about. After Harlan Ellison, my two favorite authors are Haruki Murakami and Yukio Mishima. S-I-G-H, Psy is one of my all-time favorite bands. The album Imaginary Sonicscape is one of my top 3 favorite albums of all time. And then there's other Japanese bands and artists I love, like OOIOO and X Japan and Agatsuma and T Square, and just it goes on and on. There are so many, and I'm blanking on the name because it's late, but I just posted the guy I just discovered that I really love that almost seems like the Japanese Peter Gabriel to me, but I posted about it in the community section. Anyway, Hiromisu, I think is his name. Anyway, but there, all of these pieces of the puzzle are coming together as far as me being just a huge Uketsu fan, but at the same time, I have that nagging question of, is he an artist? Does he have something really to offer here, or is this just a weird gimmick? And that's what we will explore in this video. And at the end, as I said, I teased on my channel, I have a guess as to who I think Uketsu is, so we'll get into that at the very end. But first, let's explore whether or not Uketsu is an artist with something to really contribute, or someone who's just being weird as a gimmick to launch his career. I'm filming this introduction after having filmed all the other parts of this video. This does not go well. Okay, so I just got done reading Strange Houses, and I absolutely hated it. This book tries to turn the mystery thriller genre on its head with this structural conceit, and ends up just failing to offer a satisfying story. And so the premise is that the narrator, who has really, this is all the development we get for the narrator. I'm a freelance writer, my specialty being stories of the macabre. Given this line of work, lots of people approach me with their personal experiences of the eerie and the unpleasant. Lots of these stories have to do with houses. That's all we know about this author, the character, the author within the story. The narrator, the narrator has no direct personal investment in the mystery whatsoever. All of the characters that the narrator interacts with are either people who exist only to help the narrator speculate about what's going on, or later in the story, two people who are connected to the actual story that's being told, but who themselves have no direct personal stakes in the actual story. And so what happens is the narrator receives these floor plans for this house, and at first glance it seems like the floor plans are pretty standard, and then you start to notice that there are some inconsistencies in the floor plans, and he takes it to a guy who, this other guy exists only for the narrator to have someone to talk to. And they immediately speculate that, oh, I bet this thing here that doesn't make any sense is actually a secret passageway so that someone who lives in this windowless room here can sneak in and murder people while they're in the bathtub. And that's speculated at the very beginning of the story. That's exactly what it is, and everything else is just giving you greater and greater details about what it is and why, what the purpose of this passage was, which is exactly what they thought it was. It's just there's more speculation about what it's for and specifically, and all of that speculation keeps building up and building up until we are told that yes, that's exactly what it was the whole time, and here are the names of the people that were involved in it, basically, is what it, and then it's over, and that's it. And no one who actually presents in the actual narrative of the book is ever in any real peril or danger, and all of the events of what was going on in the murder house have already happened and already resolved quietly before we ever got the story. So it's just this thing of, I bet this thing is this thing we think it is. It is the thing you think it is, and here's the people whose names were behind it. There is absolutely no tension, no build-up, no suspense, if this were being handled, if this story were being handled by Alfred Hitchcock, say, you know, the master of suspense, what he would do is he would have one of the characters actually, you know, the murders would still be going on, and the murder family would be, you know, the main character, the investigator, would wait until the murder family left for the day, and then he would sneak in the house and he would move the shelf aside that reveals the passage down into the secret passageway, and then he would go down in the secret passage himself, and right then the murder family would come home, and he'd have to slam the shelf shut and stay hiding in the secret passage, and then, oh my God, they're going to carry out one of the murders, and the, you know, the child with the knife or the axe or whatever he's going to use opens one end of the shaft to come down, and see, that's building up actual tension. Nothing like that actually happens in the book. And like I said, there's two people that are connected to, that he interacts with, that are connected to the actual murder family, and again, neither one of them is directly threatened. They just want to know what's going on like the rest of us. And the thing is, mystery writing is very, 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 very contingent on structure, on good story structure. You know, think about it this way. Everybody knows by now that, you know, the line that we all say to summarize every M. Night Shyamalan movie. What a twist. Okay. The line that summarizes this book could be, is this a twist? To which the answer is no. Like, it's once the initial speculation is confirmed, it's just a very slow on and on and on getting the names of the people that were doing exactly the thing we speculated at the beginning they must be doing. And then we know, and we find out exactly why they were doing it, but that doesn't lead to very much either. And so the fact is, there's no stakes for the characters we actually see interacted with in the story, and the characters involved in the what you could call the actual story, the story where the actual action is, everything that they do was already guessed correctly by the people in the dramatized story before it ever happened. So now we're just hearing slightly more complicated descriptions of what happened. So there's no gravitas to it, no payoff. And talking about mystery writing being one of the genres where you have to have your structure so well thought out, and if anything slips, you will lose it completely. You know, good mystery writing is like good stage magic, where, you know, a good sleight of hand magician does the trick right in front of you. Everything is done right in front of you, and you don't see it because you've been properly distracted the whole time. An example of that bait and switch done well, if you read the book Snuff by Chuck Palahniuk. Snuff is about a pornographic film that's being filmed, and it's a massive gangbang where this woman's going to have sex with 600 men in one day. And the majority of the book is told in the waiting room, the massive waiting room where all of these men are waiting for their turn to go on with the porn star. And throughout the book, it's revealed that one of the men is actually the son of the porn star, that he was adopted. I mean, she put him up for adoption, around 20 some odd years ago. And he has now come back to find and confront his mother and convince her to leave this awful lifestyle with him, and they'll go off together. You know, all this stuff, and the whole story is built up towards him being the son. And when he finally gets in there to meet the woman in person, gets on set with her to meet her in person, she laughs and says, "Oh yeah, I had a daughter." And we find out that the daughter is actually, it's revealed then that the daughter is the porn star's personal assistant, who has set up this whole 600-man gangbang because she's hoping that the mother and she has not revealed herself yet to the mother, that the mother will die in the course of this gangbang, and she'll be able to collect on the mother's life insurance policy. And so that is a good setup. You like the whole thing. If you go back and read it again, the whole thing is operating in plain sight the whole time, and we've been so guided towards this kid being the son. We've been given so much information about the emotional stakes he has in his mother, in confronting his mother, that we're committed to that premise, and we don't even think about anyone else being the child, to the point that we're not even thinking, we're not even thinking, wait, how do we even know it's a boy that was the son and everything? And we're given so much evidence to support that, and support it being the son, and that's good mystery writing right there. That's good, a good surprise, a good bait and switch, and there's nothing like that in this story. There are no stakes. There's no build-up. There's no dramatic tension whatsoever. It's just, here's what we think is happening. What it sounds like, what it reads like, is a transcript of people talking about people sitting down and talking out a mystery story. Like, it sounds like if you were to listen to mystery screenwriters or a team of novelists get together to work out this story, this is the story you would hear, is them having this discussion about how it works and how it's going to work. And most of the book is either these diagrams, or it's just a script, a transcript of the conversations these people are having. After a point, I stopped even reading who was saying what, because it just doesn't even matter. They're just those characters, the characters we actually interact with in the story that are actually appear, only exist to pontificate about what must be going on in this house, and it does not matter at all who's saying what, including the people who are directly connected to the murder family. So. A real swing and a miss with this one. I will look at the other two books and see what I think, but I'm not hopeful. All right, so I just got done reading Strange Pictures. Read the whole thing in one day, and the books the first two volumes at least are not connected, so you can read them in any order. I believe, if I understand correctly, the third one, the new one, is connected to Strange Houses. But anyway, this one's a standalone work, and it fares a little better, but still not enough that I was really thrilled with it. So the idea here, again, Strange Pictures, that it's the puzzles are built around a series of pictures, mostly a few of them fine art paintings and a few of them children's drawings. And broadly speaking, in this case, while I clarified that there would be spoilers throughout in this video, I'm not going to spoil too much, not because I have some great reverence for the plot, but just because the way he structures it, it has very much this kind of cross-generational thing where he's jumping from one period of time to another, back and forth, and trying to put it in a coherent order just to explain the whole thing would get way too complicated. But essentially, what you have are four stories built around basically we have another murder family, and this time it's one specific person, but it's all interconnected. And it works better because there are several sections in the book where he's not relying on the motif we talked about with Strange Houses, which is having a set of protagonists that only exist to discuss the pictures and discuss the ideas in the plot without actually having any real skin in the game. Now, there are That said, there are several sections that are nothing but characters who are clearly only exist to info dump on us, info dump evidence and forensic analysis and all of this. They only exist for that purpose with no personal and real personal investment in the story. There's one of the murders is of an art teacher, and there's a one of his former students is interested in cracking the case, but that's his only real connection, is just that interest. He doesn't have a deeper connection than that. So there are these sections where there are characters that only exist to info dump and discuss the information that's been dumped on us. And those sections, just like in Strange Houses, those sections are almost completely unreadable. Like, I could feel the brain fog coming on as I was trying to follow those parts. Because one, it's just not an interesting way to convey a story, and two, they just don't communicate the way people communicate. It sounds like, it kind of sounds like the scene in there's an episode of South Park that's making fun of timeshares, where the parents take the kids to Aspen for the weekend because they're going to hear a timeshare presentation, and the two douchebags running the timeshare are like, "You mean if they get in on the ground floor of this great opportunity, they'll get yada yada yada? That's exactly what I'm saying, da da da." It's that kind of fake, stilted presentation dialogue. People don't actually talk that way. And so those sections are almost completely unreadable. And that said, when we get into the actual characters, this time we actually do hear narration that's hovering over the shoulder of the actual characters within the murder family, and we have characters acting with motivation within the actual conflict. So, for example, there's a point in the second section of the novel where a little boy goes missing on his way to school, and his guardian and his pre-K teacher are both actively involved in trying to find him at that point. And at that point it becomes interesting because they both have skin in the game. So they both give us something to bite into. One thing that's interesting is that he moves the locus of empathy that you're following in the story around. So one character appears ominous and fearful at first, and then it turns out that was actually, no, this person had different motives. It was this one over here that we should have been afraid of. He moves that around a little bit, and that's a little more interesting. Makes for a little more interesting reading. But like I said, there are all of these parts where he's just dumping massive amounts of clues on us. And what it reminded me of, there's a book series that I really like called Crime and Puzzlement. And Crime and Puzzlement is a series of books. You've probably seen either this series or things like it, where you have an image of a crime scene and then information about the crime scene, a short narrative that's about a half a page long that has all the witness testimony in it and relevant information, and then it asks you a series of questions that you answer to solve the problem. Those, it works in that context because you're only committing to a half a page of info dump in order to solve the puzzle. You're not trying to also get a full narrative experience out of it. And so consequently, when he has to do this thing where he just has to stop and info dump and info dump and info dump, it becomes agonizing, especially because some of these things, these pieces of information he's introducing, are totally unnecessary. In fact, there's three sections. There's three sections in the book, or three instances in the book, where people provide drawings to give other people clues that somebody's about to kill them, or so that the murder can be solved after the fact. And it would have been, in every one of these cases, the people could have just written down, I think the person who's about to kill me is, and that would have been it. So it's a totally unnecessary contrivance just to exploit the visual puzzle aspect of it. And trying to, what it felt like, the term I came up with for what I was reading was information porn. That's basically what it is. It just feels like information porn. You have people sitting around saying, okay, so I'm making this up, but it's like, okay, so you're saying that Yoshimoto got off the train with his left foot instead of his right foot first, which is strange because we all know that Yoshimoto was born in 1935, and people who are born in 1935 have always followed the sacred rite of the Buddhist canary, which says that you get off the train with your right foot first instead of your left foot, and then he stopped to tie his shoe, which is strange because Mr. Yamayoshi, or whatever I said, usually wears sandals. Now, why would he be wearing sandals? Well, I have to think that it's because the demon worshippers of the Fukayoshi cult had gotten to him. That might be what it is. And now here's a whole chapter about the demon worshippers of the Fukayoshi cult, because whatever he guessed was something he guessed right automatically, and we'll just explore that apropos of nothing that verifies it. It's this kind of just extremely stilted, like, sure, okay, and now what wild premise are we going to put forth that immediately proves to be true? Okay, great. And like I said, it's a little interesting. There's a little bit of plot twisting going on in the way he sets you up to feel empathetic towards one character, and then they turn out to be a scumbag, but then it turns out later that they're not the scumbag, someone else is the scumbag and everything, and he moves it around a little bit. That part does work. But again, he has several things in here that do work emotionally. There's a scene where, for example, a little girl's mother is trying to squeeze her pet bird to death. The tension there is real. The build up, the tension build up, the payoff is real. It works as a sequence there. And if he could refine his technique to where he's working in that vein of giving us emotional buildup and emotional payoff and motivational buildup and motivational payoff, and incorporating the information gradually as we go, instead of just slamming the brakes and having us sit there and, go through one intricate diagram after another, trying to analyze all this information and all of these things, instead of just stopping and having us go through one page of forensic analysis after another. If he could just incorporate it into the narrative. And I mentioned before with Strange Houses that one of the things that makes mystery writing work is when it happens, it's like sleight of hand magic. The illusion happens right in front of you and you didn't see what was happening in this hand because this hand was distracting you, that kind of thing. And that's what's fun about it. That's the thrill. And if you go back to like the great masters of mystery writing, and where you have characters like Sherlock Holmes and Nero Wolfe and Hercule Poirot and that sort of thing. Those characters, the way the narratives are constructed, they're always constructed in such a way that we are beguiled by there's a naturally flowing narrative that happens. And the character that's there to provide the deductive reasoning only later compiles all of the necessary information, explains how he worked it out, what information he gleaned from what was happening that was making it obvious to him, or making it clear to him what was going on. He puts all that together later, and we go, aha. But we've been going through an actual narrative the whole time, while he's been working it out. Honestly, as far as the mystery facet of it goes, like I said, there are some horrific moments, some moments where the horror aspect is a little effective, but the mystery thing he keeps falling flat on. And honestly, I mean, I kept thinking, the movie Ace Ventura: Pet Detective has better deductive reasoning in how the case is solved than this book does. So far, either of these books do. Although it becomes a little obvious in the case of Ace Ventura if you know that Einhorn is German for unicorn. But anyway, so that's where I stand on Strange Pictures. Like I said, there were parts that were a little more effective, but it just the plot always just keeps coming back to feeling like I need to dump a bunch of information on you so that my cool picture puzzle thing you can start thinking about my cool picture puzzle thing, and once I've set up my cool picture puzzle thing, I'm immediately going to tell you what it all means and make it and move on to the next thing. And it's just not satisfying. And one of the things, as of now, I've watched a few of Uketsu's videos, and one of them, a very early one, is about Uketsu unboxing this sort of virtual reality device that he attaches to his head, and it allows him to it's supposed to help him experience the Japanese Cherry Blossom Festival. And it's this very ridiculous, surrealistic comedic buildup. And it's done effectively because even though it's surreal and bizarre, there's a central comedic premise that is very clearly built up with an A-B, Chuck Jones Looney Tunes style A-B setup payoff for each stage of the joke. And so he understands structure, and he understands how to build up narrative tension clearly. So it would be, it's interesting that his bizarre, weirdo YouTube videos pay off better than an actual novel where he's able to sit down and lay out an entire idea. So that's Strange Pictures. We'll see what I think of Strange Buildings. Okay, so it's now about a week since the last two reviews, and I just got done reading Strange Buildings, and I'm not kidding when I say this. This sounds like I'm trying to be ridiculous and funny. I really mean this. The best thing I can say about this book is that I really like the way it smells. Seriously, new books have that new book smell to them and everything, and different types of paper and different types of ink smell different. I love it. Really does. It really does smell good. I love the texture of the books. All of the books have that same texture to them. For somebody who's very sensory aware like me, like this, that's that's nice. And it is there is a pleasant quality to holding a book that has those or a pleasant experience involved in holding a book that has those qualities, those attributes to it. So that's about all I can say that's good about this. So again, re-emphasizing that there are going to be significant spoilers in this. So here's the thing. So he continues with the same author, ostensibly meaning himself, from Strange Houses. And this time it's a whole different group of buildings, or buildings that seem somehow unrelated. I'm very tired right now. It's like 1 a.m. I just finished reading. I was like, I had about 100 pages to go today. I was like, I'm getting this fucking book finished. Anyway, so there's all of these different houses and different types of buildings that all seem unrelated, and then it turns out they're all centrally connected to the same concept, and that concept is that there's this religious cult that is actually a marketing scam front for a architectural firm that has lost and construction firm that has lost credibility, and so they're reestablishing their credibility with this weird backdoor method of starting a religious cult where people who feel guilty about having had children as a result of cheating on their spouses can go for atonement, and the way they get atonement is they get this architectural construction firm to design and build houses for them that have the sleeping arrangements in specific positions that are supposed to symbolically replicate being inside of a womb and the children being reborn every day when they go down the hallways of the houses. That's the idea, and we find out that all of these unrelated buildings are all connected to that concept in some way. And once again, there are absolutely no actual stakes. All of this, all of the events that were described were things that, all the events were resolved years ago. The people involved have either died or moved on with their lives. Nobody's in immediate danger. And all it is just, okay, now we know what was going on. And there's nothing in the moment. There's nothing actually driving the story forward in the moment. See, the thing is, I know that the story I'm actively a part of, which is these people talking about these things, examining documents and looking at examining different diagrams and discussing different ideas and everything. I know that that's supposed to be a framing device for the story that's being told. But what happens is when you've actively placed me inside that framing device where everything has already happened, then what I'm connecting with on a human-to-human level within the story is characters that are not themselves either not involved in the actual story that happened or are the adult or elderly versions of younger characters that happened in the story that is being told through the back and forth conversational speculation that's emerging as these people are talking about design schematics. And I'm not actually invested in anything. It would be like if you took the Saw movies, and the Saw movies were just a guy walking through the different buildings where Jigsaw has set up the traps, and he's saying, okay, so this trap here is interesting. What it does is it goes, it's inserted into the person's mouth, and it's it's spring-loaded so that these two metal plates pop back in both directions, up and down in both directions, ripping the person's head apart when the timer goes off. And that's pretty freaky, when it actually happens. It's like, okay, that's interesting that you're describing to me what it does, but what makes it thrilling, what makes it horrifying, what makes it intense, what makes it an experience is when you've got somebody strapped to a chair with that thing attached to their face, and the timer's about to go off, and they're screaming for mercy and terrified, and we're thinking, is the clock going to go off? Will somebody save them? Now there's stakes in it. Now there's stakes. Now we're actually involved. And that's, there's none of that in these stories. None of this, like, we have to crack the case before the killer strikes again or anything like that. There's just nothing actively motivating you motivating the characters that are actively involved in the moment. They're just kind of reflecting on these things. And the problem is, so much of this story working, without going into all of the alleged intricacies of it, so much of this story working is contingent on things that would be not just nearly impossible, totally statistically impossible to have happen. Like, for example, there's one scene, or there's one setup where there's a dad that's a woman, fall down drunk and a womanizer, and outwardly mean and abusive to his wife and children, and he always staggers home drunk and passes out in his room. But the one thing he does that's nice, the one sweet thing he does to bond with one of his daughters is he has 2 cans attached to a string, that whole thing, the talking on tin cans with a string thing, and he tosses some late at night, while the daughter's in her room, he will toss the can down the hallway from his room, and she'll get it, and they'll talk to each other that way on the phone, and back and forth. And that's when he's sweet and loving, and he talks to her like he's her actual dad. And this was like her, one bonding experience with her father when she was little and everything. And the one thing she looked forward to doing with her dad all day and everything. And then we find out later that the person she was talking to was not actually her dad. It was, was not the person she thought was her dad. That was not her dad. The person she's talking to was her actual father, who lived next door. And he was throwing the can from his room across the gap between their houses into the window at the end of their hallway. It was then flying down the hallway to her room at the end of the hallway, landing there, and she was picking it up and talking to him. And this was happening night after night after night, over and over and over again, with no one else in the house noticing this. Nobody hearing, the can flying down the hall with perfect trajectory every single time. This guy should be this guy should be playing American football if he can do this. And this can flying down the hallway every single time, perfectly landing in the little girl's room, waking up no other person getting up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom and tripping over the string. Nobody, and never. This going on and on and on for years, and the little girl never once saying, "Hey, Dad, what are we going to talk about on the phone tonight?" It's just, it's just all of those things have to line up for this to happen, and it's totally ridiculous. And again, not being placed in the actual story, in the events of the actual story, makes what's happening meaningless. It's like, it would be like if you if this guy said, "Well, I'll tell you what, me and my 3 friends used to stand out in the alleyway behind our house and drink Alamo beer. And it was always a little awkward because one of my friends was this imbecilic conspiracy theory nut who was paranoid of every single thing in the world and never noticed that the Native American massage therapist that had been massaging his wife in clandestine meetups for years was actually the father of his son, who's obviously half Native American." I tell you what, it's that. It's just, think about it this, and the other thing that got me, if you're going to do anything mystery, horror, thriller, dark, scary, where you're crossing taboos and lines and everything, it is so easy to do those things badly. And it's like, the story deals with child abuse, significant occurrences of child abuse, child rape and sexual trauma, child bodily mutilation, lots of horrible things happening to kids. And what I was reminded of, there is a little-known Kevin Smith film called Vulgar. It starred Brian O'Halloran from Clerks. And it was not directed by Kevin Smith, but it was produced by him, and it was a View Askew production. And Vulgar was this horror thriller rape and revenge movie that was made by View Askew, and it was released, and or it was not released for many years after it was filmed. I think it was filmed right after Clerks, in fact. But it was the premise was that Brian O'Halloran plays this down on his luck birthday party clown who has this idea that he's going to be a fake drag stripper for bachelor parties as like a gag, a gag gift kind of joke thing for bachelor parties. And the first time he goes to do this, he is assaulted and raped by this group of cretinous men, vile cretinous men, and then the rest of the film is his past coming back to haunt him and him going and killing these guys, and it's just a basic rape and revenge film, and it's every bit as bad as it sounds. There were a couple of, I don't know, I almost want to say it wasn't quite as bad as people made it out to be, but it really was, and it's just one of those movies that just leaves you with this gross, empty feeling, like you're like, why did I pay money to see this? And I remember this one review of Vulgar came out, and somebody said, this one reviewer said, I'm paraphrasing here, but they said, it's not the fact that there's this gay gang rape scene in the middle of the movie that the whole movie is built around, this graphic scene that's not what's offensive to me. What's offensive to me is how badly done it is. And that's the thing. It's like, if you're going to take on issues like that serious issues like that in a very exploitative, over-the-top way like that, it's got to be done perfectly from a technical standpoint. Everything has to, the quality of the filmmaking has got to be undeniable. Otherwise, the real insult is that it is not that you're taking on the subject matter. The real insult is that you're not having the subject matter hit like it should. It's disrespectful to the concept that you're putting on screen to not have it hit like it should. That was my reaction to the scenes of again, child rape, child dismemberment, child getting run over by a car, all of this stuff, because it's presented in this way where there's absolutely no actual stakes whatsoever. It just feels, it just feels like it goes in one ear and out the other. And horrible crimes against children, even in a pulp novel that's being written for purely exploitative purposes, should not be handled that way. They should not be handled in this way, where in this flat, monotone way that is devoid of intensity and just and comes off as banal and boring. It's like, yeah, I can list off horrible things, and yeah. Did you know there's a drug called crocodile that eats up, when people take it, it actually eats up their arms, like chews up the flesh, and they look like zombie corpses and everything. Yeah, there you go. Crocodile exists. Did you know that there's a toning, I think it's a toning agent called synthol, that people are supposed to use, bodybuilders use to tone their, put tone on their muscles, on the skin around their muscles and everything. But what people do is they inject it, and it causes inflammation in their arms, and they pretend that they've got actual muscles, but really they're just these horribly distorted mutant arms and everything. And there's a whole thing called Victims of Synthol that you can look up. Yeah, see, these horrible things exist, and I just told you about them. Okay. I mean, if I was taking that synthol thing, for example, you could take a story about a bodybuilder who's not getting the results he wants, and you build up him, showing him go through actual emotional problems, and there's some kind of compromising payoff for him if he takes the synthol, and then, you know, him compromising his values and the fallout from that, that becomes the story. And so it's just weird to me. It is just weird to me that this, I mean, what the appeal of this, and then also, like, one of the central conceits of this, the way, you know, everything's supposed to come together with, you know, one dun 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 after another, one dramatic reveal after another. And the way he does that is he sets it up so that characters who have names in this particular story about this building are just referred to as the mysterious so-and-so in this story over here by, you know, the character explaining this story over here never learned this one person's name, and so that keeps us from drawing the connection that this person over here is also this person over here. And then the worst of it, the thing is, after you've plowed through all of these, you know, these case files of these different building incidences that he's talking about, after you've plowed through all of them, you get to Kurihara's deductions, this last third of the book. Dude, you can just skip to the last 100 or so pages of the book. Kurihara's deductions. Just skip to this part of the book. And he goes through, and this is where they explain, they put it all together, and he just goes through and summarizes all of the points from that you were supposed to take away from each one of those previous case files. They're all summarized here in each one of them as he puts it all together. He pulls back, he reiterates all the things you need to know. So you can literally, because there's no emotional stakes throughout any of this, there's no character development throughout any of this. You can't, and there's nothing like, there's nothing what I'm saying is there's nothing experiential that makes it where you need to experience the first 2/3 of this book. You can skip literally to Kurihara's deductions, go right to that, and have the whole thing explained to you. You know, have the entire thing explained to you, the whole story, and miss nothing. Like, you will miss nothing at all if you go to those, if you skip the first 2/3 of this book. And, you know, coming back to my central question of, is this legitimate art, or is it a marketing gimmick? I have to think that it's a marketing gimmick, and I want to reemphasize, I did not go into this wanting to do some kind of ownage video or something like this. I went into it genuinely intrigued, and I have wanted to do a commentary like this on one of these YouTube phenomenons, especially one of these like mysterious characters like this, for a while now. And I went into this with an open mind. I mean, I committed the $60 roughly to buying all 3 of these books, and as I understand it, there's going to be a 4th one, and I absolutely will not be bothering to review that one. And every bookstore I go into now has a cardboard stand-up with the Uketsu mask holding his books, you know, and everything. And no, I'm sorry, but this, the very best I can say, having read all 3 of these now, the very best I can say is that he is clearly someone who is trying to find an innovative way to tell a story. And it's one of those things where it's like, you know, I don't remember if I already said this in the previous examples, but House of Leaves by Mark Z. Daniszewski is one of my all-time favorite novels. This is one of the most brilliant books ever written, and mine has been, the binding has been taped back together. It's one of those where I've just read it so many times that happens. Okay. It is one of my favorite novels of all time. And every single other book of his I have read has been unreadably bad, because all he cares about is coming up with nifty ways to structure the pages together and everything. And it's like you try reading his book, Only Revolutions, and apparently the way you're supposed to read it is you read 8 pages, flip the book over and read 8 pages, flip the book over again and read 8 pages. Like, dude, just write it that way. Just write it that way. And, and I said on the Mark Z. Danielewski forum one time, I said I loved House of Leaves, and after that, everything was people saying, well, the new book only makes sense if you put it on a record turntable and tear up the pages and put them in a pyramid and then read them while hanging upside down and rotating on a trapeze. And somebody responded, I see nothing wrong with this interpretation, and that's it over and over, or that's the thing. I mean, it's just he's disappearing up his own. Oh, by the way, I do know that Mark Z. Danielewski has now written a book that's supposed to be like his first ever, just straight ahead, normal, structured book, and I am curious to read that, but I'm not in any hurry because I've been so disappointed by everything else he's written. But if you're going to do a book like this, the experience of exploring it and exploring the unusual structure and everything has got to be enjoyable. The 2 great examples of that I can think of, one, I unfortunately do not have a copy available to me right now, but one of my all-time favorite books in this vein, and there's a term for books like this that are structured in these unusual ways, and I'm forgetting what it is, but it's a book called Maze, Solve the World's Most Challenging Puzzle by Christopher Manson. And the idea is it's a book where each page or each set of pages has a text description of a narrative on one page and then an image of a room on the other page, and each of the doors or pathways in the room has a different number on, and that number is the page you turn to. And obviously how the story unfolds, that very much depends on the order that you go through the rooms in and how you put the clues together and all of that, and different narratives emerge. It's extremely intricate. It's beautiful, fascinating. That is satisfying because the experience of it, the journey is the destination. Another great example, if you're wanting, that I can point to, if you're wanting something that's structured in a very unique way, like a House of Leaves or something like that, or in an unusual way like this that actually pays off, I recommend this series, the Griffin and Sabine series by Nick Bantock. And Nick Bantock is an illustrator that had this absolutely brilliant idea for a series of books, which is, this is a romance between a man and a woman. The man is a graphics designer who does postcards. And so all of the pages are his different postcard designs that have been sent, and the correspondence is between him, Griffin, and a woman named Sabine. And as it comes to pass, this, Sabine is a fan of his work and is writing to him and everything. And as they go back and forth, it starts to become apparent that Sabine may not actually exist, or reality may not be functioning as we think it is. But everything is told through this correspondence, through these postcards. And they actually made an interactive CD-ROM. I hesitate to call it a walking simulator, but they did make an interactive CD-ROM. I mean, a game. I hesitate to call it a game, but they did make this CD-ROM where you can go through all of the books, all the letters, and some of them are in little envelopes and everything. And it comes with, and as the correspondence gets more intricate, they go from being postcards to being letters and stuff like that. And it's such a cool way to tell a story and to explore themes of desire and disillusionment and longing and limerence and confusion around romance and everything. It's just fascinating. And so Griffin and Sabine, it is a satisfying story that is told in this very, very odd, sort of oddly structured way. There's 3 books in the series. I just have the first one. And yeah, they made the interactive CD-ROM game, Ceremony of Innocence, it's called, if I didn't say that already. Ceremony of Innocence, I believe, covers all of the books, because there's more to it than what's in here. And if you really want the experience of that, I don't think Ceremony of Innocence is actually available anywhere anymore. So go look on YouTube for the playthrough, get the whole experience. So that's where I'm at with these Uketsu books. I don't think I just don't think the story amounts to very much. You know, this idea of the religious cult, that, you know, the architectural firm that's using religious indoctrination to guilt people into buying houses from them, is that the kind of weird surrealistic sort of idea that could pay off if it were done in the hands of a Haruki Murakami, or a Philip K. Dick, or somebody. I mean, even my favorite, Harlan Ellison, you know, someone like that, someone who specializes in the surreal and knows how to build a narrative in a very careful and calculating way over time. Haruki Murakami probably being the best person to handle it for all of the facets of Japanese culture that factor in and everything. But yeah, it's an attempt at an interesting idea that just does not pay off. So I had said I would offer my educated guess about who I think Uketsu is, and the thing is, like I said at the beginning of this video, have followed a lot of these anonymous, faceless, masked creatives and performers through the years and everything, and what I've noticed is very often the actual person behind the persona is hiding in plain sight. Anytime you have somebody that's claiming to have unique or exclusive access to the person in question, that usually is the person, the actual performer. And, you know, in literary circles, great examples include Daniel Handler claims to be the representative of Lemony Snicket. Daniel Handler is Lemony Snicket. Chris Van Allsburg claims to have discovered Harris Burdick. Chris Van Allsburg is Harris Burdick. And then, you know, musically, one of my favorite bands is The Residents, and, you know, The Residents are supposed to be this anonymous, faceless collective. No one knows who they are, but then they had these four guys, Hardy Fox, Homer Flynn, John Kennedy, no relation, and Jay Kim, who formed the Cryptic Corporation, quote unquote, which was supposed to be the public relations, business, graphics design, tour coordination arm of the Residents entity. And of course they are the Residents, and it's become increasingly obvious through the years. John Kennedy and Jay Clem left after about the first 10 years of the band because they were having financial problems and they wanted to get real jobs. Hardy Fox and Homer Flynn kept it going for years, and then Hardy Fox died recently, and all the obituaries confirmed that he was one of the Residents, one of the actual Residents, and it all just falls into place. Everyone knows that Homer Flynn is the only surviving Resident at this point. It's so funny, he still denies it. It's like, Homer, buddy, I saw you 2 times live during the Randy, Chuck, and Bob era of the Residents. Your mask does not even cover your whole face at this point. I mean, we know it's you. Anyway, so thinking about that, I thought, well, who is that in relation to Uketsu? And I kept noticing over and over again, it emphasizes that the books are translated by Jim Rian. And it says, you know, translated by Jim Rian on the title page. It emphasizes, in all the books, it emphasizes Jim Rian, or Ryan, however you say it, it's R-I-O-N. But Jim Rian, it emphasizes him again. And Then he wrote the afterword to one of the books, to Strange Houses, and he claims to have been the person who brought Uketsu to an English-speaking audience, which is highly unlikely because Uketsu was already internationally famous before the books started coming out, and so it's only natural that his publishers would want English editions of the books for this internationally famous YouTuber. And I noticed, I went on Jim Ryan's personal website, and it's very much set up to be a publicity apparatus for Uketsu. And so he lives, one of the few things they say we know about Uketsu is that he lives in Japan. Jim Ryan also lives in Japan. And I also noticed in all of the publicity, the interviews with Uketsu and everything, there tends to be a sidebar featuring Jim Ryan. And this level of involvement from a translator is just almost unheard of. Like Haruki Murakami, people know who his translators are, which are widely aware of who his main translators are, which is the main one is well, I just shot myself in the foot because my mind went blank. But Jay Rubin, that's it. I have to look it up at all. Thank you. Jay Rubin is the main one, and there's a couple of other guys that do it. But those, they are well known because Haruki Murakami is such a rock star on the international literary circuit that everyone associated with him becomes a rock star by default. But like Yukio Mishima, one of my favorite authors, I don't know who the translator of these books is. It's listed, in the front page, and that's it, and you barely notice who they are. The author who got me into Japanese literature in the first place was Koshin Takami, who wrote Battle Royale. I have no idea who translated that. It's just the translators don't usually get this much attention, even for internationally famous artists and everything. Or creatives. Who translates the Junji Ito books? Do we know? Do we care? No. But over and over again, Jim Ryan keeps showing up alongside Uketsu. Like I said, he wrote the afterword to one of the books and everything, and so his level of involvement is very suspect to me. He's getting a lot of publicity, a lot of screen time associated with Uketsu, which is just so very strange for someone who's just the translator. So that's my guess. I think it's Jim Ryan. And I think he probably feels like he can hide in plain sight like that because everybody is just assuming that because Uketsu lives in Japan, they keep saying he lives in Japan. They don't keep saying he is Japanese. So they keep assuming because Uketsu lives in Japan, that must mean he's ethnically Japanese. And Jim Ryan lives in Japan and is not ethnically Japanese. And so that's my guess. That's who I think it probably is. And, do I think these books could stand on their own if they weren't associated with this mysterious person that we're all trying to puzzle out? No.